If you've ever wished you were a morning person, but you just can't seem to get there, then today's podcast is for you.
Welcome to the Jen Canodal Podcast, where authentic conversations meet practical application. Jen is a storyteller and lifelong truth seeker. Expect to hear about wellness, mindset, and personal growth. Now here's your host and child of God, Jen Canodal.
Hi, everyone. I have Chris Winters, a high-performance coach at Project Life, and also we've become friends over the months. And Chris focuses on entrepreneurs and business owners and helps them get the life that they want. Welcome, Chris.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Very glad to be here.
Yeah. So I love your style. I love, I follow you on Instagram and LinkedIn, but we connected on LinkedIn. So I got to give you kudos for actually being one of the people that, knows how to work LinkedIn. I just commented on something today that it's like, man, there's some bad LinkedIn strategies out there, as far as like trying to network, because a lot of times it's like, I don't know, I was called sir recently. I'm all right. That's some like, no, you did not get my business.
Yeah.
I really like that because tell me your philosophy, just, kind of regarding, networking and making connections.
Yeah, I think it's definitely changed. I think just like anybody, when you first get into business, you're ultimately thinking about the business, the growth of it, which a lot of times, obviously, our energy and our focus kind of goes around the finance, side of that, right? Making sales or bringing on clients. And I think definitely when I first started, there was a lot more like forced approach, right? Where it was, hey, I'm reaching out to this person because I'm interested in having them in a client. Whether I think they're going to be a good client or not, it's, hey, let's just start this conversation. And I think where it's changed now is some of the best clients that I've brought on, and also the clients that have ended up staying with me the longest, were actually the people that I started with just by having a conversation, right? Where it's like, hey, love your post, looks like you're doing similar things, and then it's just by design, we end up connecting on a call to see what's working in our businesses. And then it's like, shoot, you know what? There is a, mutual kind of connection here where I believe that I could help you. And it just kind of naturally takes that course. Or the person will naturally say, hey, it looks like you do this, would you be able to help me? Right. And then it kind of goes that way. So I think it's definitely turned to be a much more genuine, connection and, just kind of, we call it nurturing, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely changed a bit since when I first started.
It's a long game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're in it for any other reason, it just, you become a prisoner of the business. Yeah. And it's so boring too.
Yeah.
Like, damn, another month, no sales, no client.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think it does. So all these, the networking and the hustling that you're doing, it sounds like you're doing a lot of it in the morning, because that's what we're going to talk about, like how you're such a morning person. And have
Great
you always been a
segue.
morning person?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I definitely, it's funny. I was always very similar to my mom. And then my sister was always very similar to my dad in terms of like both of them could sleep, maybe 9, 10, 11 hours. And then my mom is, hey, she's up, she's at it, she's doing,
Yeah.
the grocery shopping,
Yeah.
she's doing anything like that. And so I was always a morning person, never had issues getting up for school. In the summer times, I liked getting up early, whether it was going, I used to ride, my bike with, some of my buddies, whatever it was.
Route?
What's that?
Paper route?
No, I didn't have a paper route. I did help my cousin lives in New York in Staten Island. And whenever I actually slept over at his place, he had a paper route and I did help him with that. So I have experience, but I never did it, on my own. But yeah, I've always been a morning person. And then when I was at Amazon for 3 years, my morning routine was I had to wake up at 4 because it was about 30 minutes from my house. The shift started at 6, but I had to be there about like 5:30 just to kind of set up the planning. So that was more of like a forced morning routine, although I didn't, necessarily mind it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I know you're going to share some reasons that we should be a morning person, and I think so many of us have heard it. I always called myself a night owl, but I have noticed that, yeah, it's interesting how I guess just age and time and wisdom and all that, I've become more of a morning person. And so, yeah, I mean, do you think that, I mean, they can evolve into this. And I think you're gonna, you know what? I'm gonna let you jump right into the reasons that we should be a morning person.
Yeah, well, I definitely think that people could evolve into it. I'll start with that. And the same way I talked about, my content in my business or networking with people changing, I definitely used to, when I first get started, saying, hey, you can do this, right? You can wake up at 5, you can wake up at 6, but I've definitely evolved since then. Although I think people can be morning people, that doesn't need to be 5 a.m. It could be just waking up earlier. And I'll get into that point in a second. Is there are, what I've learned is, you might call yourself a night owl, not because you like staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning, but maybe because your creativity or creative thoughts are
Yes.
just flowing in the later hours,
Yes.
so it tends to be where a lot of times, and there, I even find myself, even though I call myself, hey, I'm a morning person, there's times where I come home later at night and I'm like, damn, I just want to jump on my computer because these ideas are just kind of flowing, and it's why is that? Is it because, damn, in the morning I didn't do anything? Or is it, hey, I'm just kind of tapping into more of that frequency late at night where it's, hey, lights are out, I get my laptop, nobody's bothering me, I'm relaxed, I'm, getting ready for bed, and my thoughts are just kind of going. So I've definitely evolved from that standpoint. But in terms of the morning, again, like I mentioned, it's not about waking up at 5 o'clock. But if you look at it, people always say, whether you care about cold plunges or whether you care about working out or whether you care about meditating, whatever it might be, there's no one set perfect like morning routine. But one of the most common things that, I think we could all agree on is there's no highly successful people. And I'm not calling myself highly successful just yet.
Yeah. I
But,
mean, there
there's no
perspectives,
highly
everything.
successful people that are saying like, hey, I sleep in, right? I go to bed whatever time I want, I sleep in. And then when I wake up, I just kind of go about it, whatever. There's some form of structure. Some people might say, hey, I wait till the sun comes up, right? And that could be 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 6:30, whatever time that might be, but nobody's just sleeping in. And I honestly feel like the morning routine is the biggest opportunity for so many people because a lot of people, the average person, and I enjoy speaking to, the entrepreneur, the business owner, right? Somebody that's creating their own schedule. But even for the everyday person that is maybe going to a 9 to 5, whether they're going into the, headquarters or the office space, or whether they're working remote, is you see these memes where it's like 8:59, them in bed, and then 9 o'clock, they have a dress shirt on, pajama pants, and they're sitting in front of, the camera jumping on their first Zoom call. That is just what I represent as like a reactive lifestyle. Like if you're just waking up and now you're going into the work, which maybe you don't love, maybe you do enjoy, whatever it is, everything else is just going to be reactive from that, right? That's where you find yourself, oh, I can't wait till this call's done. Then that call's done. It's, oh, I can't wait till it's lunchtime. Then lunchtime's done. It's like, oh, I can't wait till the end of my day. I try to help people to get them to a place where they don't have to wish for the end of the day or wish for Friday, but for
Yeah.
them to create the life that they're happy to live every day.
Yeah, totally. I can relate to all the different instances that you're said. Yeah. And like
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely
again,
sorry. Go ahead with that.
the 80s song, everybody's working for the, going
But
on
yeah,
for a
no,
while.
yeah, the morning is, I feel like, a big opportunity. And I think some people also, another note that I could add is people might consider themselves a morning person, but I think the next step is what goes into that, because I think some people could call themselves a morning person, might wake up early, awesome. And again, there's no one set morning routine. There's going to be the person that loves to wake up and jump right into their work, right? Jump right into their, we call it like deep work, right? Or their focused work where there's no distractions. And then there's going to be the other person that maybe starts their day with a workout, right? Or maybe they start with meditating or planning for their day or,
Walking their
reading.
dog.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Some people might want to go outside and go for a walk, or touch grass with their bare feet, whatever it might be,
Yeah. Yep.
so there is no one size fits all.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually thinking because in preparation for this call, I was thinking about my morning routine and I was like, can't get around this walking the dog. He's not going to let that happen. So
Yeah.
got to work that in there. And, um, something that just popped in my mind is, and I would imagine that, I mean, do you suggest people do hap habit stacking?
For sure, for sure. I think, yeah, I think it's definitely a good method, because I think especially when we talk about the end of the night, where people might find that as being their creative time, is I think that habit stacking also allows people to, I'll use myself as an example, is if I have a call at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning, I've recently made a change in terms of my workout time. But if I can start my day with now, and I'll try to speak to the average person as well, with, hey, I took care of my workout, right? I read this book that's, I usually read mindset or business, or personal development books, right? If I could do that, and now I'm getting ready to go into my 9 to 5, I know that I took care of myself, right? And now for me, somebody that has their own business, when I jump on a call, I always like to say, you can't fully help others until you fully help yourself, right? So working out, I love doing that first thing in the morning, because it's one of the very few things that, yes, it takes energy from us, but it also gives us energy, right? People
Right.
always say, hey, you never leave church feeling worse than when you went there, right? It's the same way with the gym. Well, hey, but other
Sometimes
people
I'm like,
say,
I'm a terrible person.
you never leave the gym feeling,
That
worse than we went there, right?
that's true.
You've probably either got a pump, or you got a sweat, or you pushed, more than you have on the treadmill, whatever it is. Now you leave there. And if I'm jumping on a call with a client, I have this wave of energy that has me like ready to serve, because I knew I took care of, myself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Exercise is the most underused anti-anxiety, anti-depression. Absolutely. You really can't replace it. Yeah,
No.
sometimes I am kind of working out the kinks of my morning routine because I had a pretty long morning routine that was really nice for me. I mean, it included meditating and exercising and walking the dog and journaling. But the problem, and I'm not like a super morning person, I probably wake up about 7:30, but it seemed like I wasn't ready to start my work day until, 10 o'clock, 10:30, because,
Yeah.
by this time I'm hungry. Now I want some coffee. Anyway, that's, I mean, I guess it's just really, really figuring that out. And again, in preparation for the call, I was like, man, if I had to be at work at 8 o'clock somewhere, had to fight traffic, means, okay, so now I have to leave the house at 7. So, like, I got to walk the dog and do my thing. So now I'm up at 6. So, I mean, I think this brings me to like your next point, which is like, I mean, so much of your night. Yeah. I mean, that's, you can't, you got to prepare, you got to be proactive at night for this early morning that, you're going to get up and take on the day, because otherwise you'd be dragging. And,
Yeah, and I see too, what you had mentioned, right, with the morning routine, is you had mentioned that you'd go through your morning routine. It might set you up for success, and then, it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock before you're jumping into your tasks. Is we always want to make sure, for me, I love doing random challenges where it's like, oh, a month of no coffee, right? Or a month of, working out every single day, or a month of, or maybe even a week, right?
outreach.
A smaller scale thing. Yeah, whatever it might be that's maybe tough, or that you want to make sure doesn't control you, or that you can control your mind to be able to get these things done. Is I heard this, and I apologize, I don't know who I could quote for this, but it's basically, math. Anything times zero is zero. So when I'm speaking to the entrepreneur, the business owner, somebody that is trying to make their own paycheck, their own living, they're trying to grow things, if they spend all of this time going through the perfect morning routine, they do the cold plunge, they do the meditating, they do the reading, they do whatever, and then they get time to work and they're like, oh, shoot, I got to go send 5 messages. Oh, shoot, I got to do, like, you will never get results. Anything times zero is always zero, right? So the same way you had mentioned it is, I think some people can't go about their day without their coffee. some people can't go about their day without their morning routine. And yes, that's great because you have routines that help you, you have things that support your journey. But what do you do on the day where you don't have 100% energy? Do we just say, hey, I can't go to work? No, you can't afford to do that, right? And most people go to work when they're sick, or most people go to work when they don't want to go. So when you become your own boss, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're a business owner, if we make excuses for everything, we never build a life that we want, right? If it's, woke up a little bit of a cold, I'm just, I'm not going to do anything. You know what? I don't really have the energy for outreach. I'm going to do that 3 hours later. Next thing you know, you're eating lunch 3 hours later, and then you still don't want to do it. And then you push it back off to tomorrow, and then tomorrow never ends. And, it's a long story there.
Feeling stuck in life? Not sure what's working and what's not? Jen created a free Authentic Wellness audit to help you identify where you thrive and where you need a reset. It's quick, insightful, and completely free. Get yours now at the link in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that does remind me that even though these ideas apply to everyone, so much more so for the entrepreneur or the business owner, because we do have a lot more um flexibility. And I know that there were times where I worked for someone else and it's like, you go to work not feeling 100% or not, or sick or whatever,
Yeah.
but it's because, I mean, at least I'll just speak for myself, that it was like, I mean, I guess it's like I don't care that much about this job. I
Yeah.
just, my heart and soul isn't into it. So, I mean, where am I? Yeah, I guess it's like you can half-ass it, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because it's like it's someone else is telling you what to do. You don't really have to go through the mental stress that we have to go through. I mean, you and I were just kind of talking some strategies before we got on this call, and it was like, oh, but you can't forget this. And then you got to tie in the marketing and the SEO, and then do.
Yeah.
It's like you have to be on top of it if you're going to be an entrepreneur.
Well, and I
Absolutely.
think that's also, sorry to cut you off, I think you also just brought in another perfect example for the morning routine when you're talking about all these different things, especially being a solo entrepreneur, right? Or running your business by yourself. It's like you can't really, as you're trying to build your brand, if you just focus on the back end of stuff, right? I'm improving my website, I'm creating landing pages, I'm doing whatever, but you're not putting yourself out there, or you're not creating content, or you're not sending out messages, you're a ghost. Nobody knows you. You either exist or you don't, right? And so when we are trying to manage all of these different things every single day, every single week, the proper morning routine, the proper, again, it could be 7 a.m., it could be 8 a.m., it could be a 30-minute morning routine that gets you primed and ready to go, or it could be a 2-hour morning routine, right? Whatever is best for you, but setting you up for success so that now after that morning routine, you have the energy to, one, say, let's friggin' do this, but then you have the plan that's aligned with you and saying, hey, I know exactly why I want to do this, or why I need to get these things done today, right? Because you're able to prioritize and you have a clear mind, not just you wake up, you're in a rush. Oh, shoot, it's time for my first call. Then you're not prepared for the client call, or even this case, maybe for, an interview or a podcast or whatever it is that you're setting out to do. So it's all about, ultimately, one, do you care enough to set yourself up for success? And two, are you willing to wake up 30 minutes earlier, right? Or plan your day to be able to see more growth in your life?
Yeah, I heard someone recently. I take in so much information, like kind of, I think you said earlier, I have no idea where I heard it, but I loved the analogy of being a butler for yourself. And it reminds me of your nighttime routine influencing your morning routine. If you really need to have your coffee every morning, but you like your coffee beans ground, fresh, because I do. No, but it's like maybe setting up that prep station the night before, making sure that there's like not a mess of dishes on the counter. I
Yeah.
mean, just laying out your clothes. I mean, what have you? Setting yourself up, being a butler the night before, so that when you wake up in the morning, it's like I'm not. It is kind of, I don't have to get into the flow as much because it's already been dictated for me from that creative person I am at nighttime.
Yeah, and I think you also bring in a different, and I'll tie this to morning routine and evening routine is like decision fatigue, right? We do not want to be making a ton of big decisions every single day, or we kind of like drain ourselves. We kind of get burnt out. And I think that's one of those things where, there's one thing I sometimes recommend, and not often, is like the 2 minute rule. And it basically talks about, hey, you could either start your day with this. I usually don't recommend it first thing in the morning, but maybe after your morning routine or right before you get into work, where it's basically the 2 minute rule where you give yourself maybe 20, 30 minutes and you do all the simple tasks that take you like 2 minutes or less, right? And that doesn't even need to be business related. It could be whatever, where you, like you mentioned, hey, these dishes are here. They're going to bother me every time I walk past them. Let me do the dishes. Now you're washing the dishes. You're thinking about the next thing. Hey, I got this message I got to respond to. Send the message, right? Because if we jump into our work or if we jump into our morning, we have all these things that are trying to pull our attention. It makes it so damn hard for us to one, stay on track. It's like if in the back, I mean, this is a separate office room here, but if behind me, let's say this is my bedroom, which is most of the people that are either, entrepreneurs working online or remote workers, right? They usually have their office in their bedroom or a separate space. If my bed was right behind here and it had a ton of clothes on it, that's going to distract me all day, right? The same
Yeah.
thing, workspace, right? Maybe spending 2 minutes to say, hey, let me throw these papers out or let me go through these papers here so that now when I jump into my task, it's a lot easier, and I think that could come from the morning routine or the night, like you mentioned. Hey, I know I'm going to want my coffee. Let me just get it out. Hey, I know I'm going to want a good carb source before my workout. Hey, let me prepare overnight oats.
Yeah.
Simplest thing, easiest thing, takes 30 seconds and I love it. So yeah, that's a great point.
I know at I mean, so is there anything specific that you suggest? I feel like we've talked about, I think you try to write down the three things you're going to do the next day. Is that
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of your nighttime routine?
Yeah, so my nighttime routine, I mean, I try to keep it pretty simple. The same way, it's, hey, end of the day, I don't want to, and this is definitely something I'll raise my hand on that I'm actively working on, is not trying to be on my, computer too often or not trying to be on my phone as often. So one thing I'm trying to do is push like consuming content to like the weekend. But obviously that's a little bit tough, is in my evening routine, I like to review kind of like some of my spreadsheets, right? So whether it's me tracking any like revenue or, sales that I made for the day, me tracking some outreach numbers, tracking social media posts, right? So I kind of have my daily non-negotiables or checklist for the business, but also my personal life. So working out, I'm currently reading. I got like 50 pages that I got to finish within the next 2 or 3 days to finish out this book, before the end of the month. But yeah, I think so for that, reviewing my day, that's how I like to end it, right? So if I'm not checking boxes, means my day didn't go as planned or means I didn't plan properly. So I'll review that. And then the second thing I like to do is think based off of today's performance and things that I have tomorrow, whether it's tomorrow I might have a busy day of calls. I might have no calls at all, right? So that's going to change how I structure my day and where I focus my time. So like you mentioned, if I'm working on something big, I might just write down my one priority, or the average day, I write down my top three priorities and then make sure they're, in my upcoming days, schedule.
And you put the frogs on there because you got to eat the frogs first,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you got to do that. Yeah, and it's definitely you're absolutely right. So for part of my morning routine, that big thing, the thing that I need to focus on, which is either revamping my program, which I'm doing right now, or working on something else, is that's my deep work time, and a lot of times that's my morning routine.
Yeah. And I also meant the things that you don't want to do, but you know that you have to do,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, ugh, let me just write it. Let me just have it here in black and white so that you know, I know what to do. So, what why do you think that people I mean, I find it in myself that I mean, I wake up okay in the morning, but I have to discipline myself to go to sleep at night. I mean, just at night I'm just like, I don't want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you I noticed I watched a video that you put out that was really kind of talking about visual seeing yourself as a morning person. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and that's more so about, the idea of like being, right? I always like talking about life responds to who you be, or life responds to who you are, right? And it's like,
I like who you be.
yeah, I meant to say like life responds to who you are. That doesn't sound too professional there,
No,
but
no, it actually is cute. It's like it's who you
yeah.
be.
So
No, I
when you
like
think
it.
about it, like, a lot of times it's, hey, I want to be the successful coach, or hey, I want to be a morning routine, or I want to do whatever. And we can't just I don't say, hey, I'm going to go to the hospital when I feel better. Well, when I'm sick, I'm going to go to the hospital, right? I'm going to go get checked out because I know that that's how the system works. And I think a lot of times that I made this mistake in the beginning is it's like, oh, I'll start going live on Instagram when I get 100 clients, right? Or, oh, I'll start posting, behind the scenes on my YouTube channel when I make $1 million, right? And it's like, then you find yourself just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting when, hey, what if I started to document the journey now? And that's the thing that got me to be there, right? And I think it's also, when you look in a mirror, right? The mirror doesn't wait for you to smile. I mean, the mirror doesn't smile at you. It doesn't wave to you. It waits for you, right? You have to smile to reflect back. So if you want to become a morning person, right, or be a morning person, you have to do and reflect your life as what a morning person does.
Yeah,
So like you mentioned, hey, you struggle to fall asleep at night. The most common mistake that people make is if you're waking up at 12 p.m. right now, you say, all right, tomorrow I'm setting my alarm for 5 a.m. Even if you wake up at 5 a.m., you are probably not going to do it the following day or 2 days
right.
later because you're going to burn out. I think there's studies show that to help yourself become a morning person is to decrease the time that you wake up by about 15 minutes, right? So if you're currently waking up at 10 and maybe who knows, 8 o'clock would be good enough for you, then wake up at 9:45, wake up at 9:30, wake up at 9:15. It'll take you a week, 2 weeks to get to your goal. If you're trying to get to 5 a.m., that's going to be a bigger shift. I would do it a little bit of a slower journey, right? Maybe
Sure.
just wake up at 9 for a week or two and then get to 8, but obviously try not to make it too drastic. But yeah, that's one of the most common things where people, one, try to reduce their time way too quick. They go from waking up at 12 to 5 or 10 to 6. You have to do it incrementally, or in smaller increments. And the other thing that I would say is a lot of times people say, hey, Chris, I don't get it. I got my 8 hours of sleep. Why am I struggling to stick to my schedule? It's not just about getting 8 hours of sleep. It's about a consistent sleep schedule. So if you go to bed at 10 o'clock one night, hey, maybe you retired, you fell asleep easier. It's not, oh, okay, I'm going to wake up at 6 now because that's 8 hours. Then the next night you go to bed at 12 and you're like, oh, okay, well, if I still get up at 8, hey, I got my 8 hours of sleep and it's earlier than 10, I'm good. Our body, that means that one day you were up for maybe 16 hours, the next day you were up for 18 or 20 hours, and that's not going to help us get into that rhythm of being able to wake up a little bit easier. So it's not just, hey, I need 6 hours, I need 8 hours. It's following that set schedule, which makes it easier to fall asleep, and then easier to wake up.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's so many little tips and kind of we talked about. I mean, I'm a big fan of coaching, but as we discussed, it's like a lot of these things. I mean, that's such a simple idea. What would a morning person do?
Yeah.
If I were a morning person, what would I do? It's like, oh, well, I'd probably, I'd probably work out. Okay, so I should probably put my clothes next to, like lay them out the night before, but just the incremental, just making those incremental changes. Because I've done some wellness coaching as well as we've discussed, and that's
Yeah.
what I realize it always comes down to. It's like a foundational issue of how you see yourself.
And I think
And
and that's a mindset shift too, because I'll have a lot of times where, the same way I said is a lot of people that call themselves a night person, that's when their creative thoughts are flowing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that causes people to be one-sided and to block out the opportunity of being a morning person, right? Because I'm like, oh, well, I think you should wake up earlier, or this is what your morning routine could be. And they're like, no, 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 I get much more done in the evening. Like, I don't want to switch. But I'm not telling them they can't do that, right? I'm here to help them optimize it. So I'm not going to tell them to force themselves to do things in the morning. I'm just trying to help them enhance themselves to get everything done that they want, not just the bits and pieces that maybe aren't the most important things for them right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that. Really kind of looking at the person as a whole person instead of, let's just try to solve this, let's try to, it's kind of like in, health, getting to the root of the problem versus just treating the symptom. So,
Yeah.
if our listeners, what if they just remember one thing, and I know that we had a bunch of good things, but I mean, if you could just say one good thing, one big takeaway from this. I mean, I know it's to be a morning person, but yeah, what do you want to leave them with?
Yeah, so I would say to make it, simple is obviously to kind of bring everything together is I would say win the morning, win the day. And I think that'll just emphasize the importance of everything that we've talked about in terms of benefits or how to be able to get there is it's not just to say, hey, I wake up at 5, right? Like it's not to be a brag. It's not to say, hey, this is why I was successful. It's ultimately to say, hey, whoever is watching this has their own goals, right? They're not my goals. They're not your goals. They have their own goals. And it's just to say, hey, if we can win the morning, regardless of our schedule, regardless of if you're a parent, a business owner, you're building a side hustle outside of your job, there's things that we can do in the morning to allow us to enhance everything we do that's going to pop up for the rest of the day. Whether it's being stronger, whether it's, being, more disciplined, or whether it's, building a better mindset, or perspective. So win the morning, win the day. That's the thing they got to remember and take away from this.
Nice. Yeah, it reminds me of that famous, I don't know, admiral that did that, commencement speech about making your bed first thing in the morning. It's like get something done, get wins
Yeah.
under your belt. So yeah, you're in good company there. So Chris, as we mentioned in the beginning, you help entrepreneurs and business owners get straight about getting the life that they want. Where can people connect with you? I will put a couple links in the show notes, but I think you said the best way to connect with you is on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram's probably the best. I think for anybody that's new to me or wants to check out more of either what I have to say or what I'm currently working on or any of the offers that I might have. I think Instagram will kind of give you that full picture of how long I've been in the space, what I like talking about, the things I'm passionate about. But if somebody doesn't have Instagram, I'll also give you the link to my website so that they could check out more on there.
Yeah, and I just remembered that talking to you about you do have a free download that can help people out. Can you give me a short
I do. Yeah,
summation?
so
Yeah, please.
that's more for you start to get a little bit more for the business owner or entrepreneur, but this could also
Mhm.
be for anybody that is maybe just feeling overwhelmed right now. You might have a to-do list or a task list that maybe doesn't motivate you or maybe you feel like is draining you. So for anybody that feels, hey, I don't know if I'm overwhelmed, I don't know if I'm burnt out, I created a little bit of a cure, a little bit of a guide. There's 3 videos that you could watch to keep it as simple as possible, or you could just read kind of the guide that I created if you prefer learning that way. And it basically talks a little bit more about the mindset shifts we need to have about our day and about our perspectives and about everything we're trying to do. But then there's also, some small exercises in there. There's a 5-question assessment that basically, scores your current routines to help you see what you want to work on or what you need to focus on, along with some other, time management tips and tricks.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Of
It
course.
has
Thank you for
been
having me.
it's been an excellent reminder that, especially as entrepreneurs, it's like we got to be proactive. What does my mom say? Plan your day or your day will plan you. So it
Yeah.
looks like you and my mom are, don't tell her that she's right.
A failure to plan is a plan to fail.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
I
It's
take
good
her
stuff.
side. I take her side.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much for joining me.
Of
And
course.
yeah, hope to have you on soon.
Perfect. Sounds
All
good. Thank you
right.
so
Bye,
much.
Chris.
I'll see you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Jen Canodal Podcast. If you found value in this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss what's next. And if something stood out to you, share it with a friend, because great conversations don't stop here.